All right, let's get started. I'm really excited to present the next talk to you by Julia Pottinger. Julia is going to be talking or sharing her Agile QA Toolkit, which will enable you to be more confident, think on your feet, and perform tasks efficiently and really grow in the QA space. Julia is a training and development manager at Quality Works with expertise in manual, automated, and API testing and training. She's passionate about sharing her knowledge and experience and contributes to the testing community by writing articles, delivering testing content, and she also shares content on her YouTube channel and blog. She also conducts testing bootcamps for folks interested in entering the field of QA. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Julia.
All right. Hi, everyone. Let me find my tab to share. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this talk on creating your QA toolkit. I am Julia Pottinger, and I'm just going to quickly walk you through how I went about creating my Agile QA toolkit and how I am going to encourage you and show you steps on how you can create one. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're staying safe in these times. I know it has been a rough year, and I hope that everyone is doing well and in the best of health as possible. All right. So as I said before, my name is Julia Pottinger. I am currently the training and development manager at Quality Works Consulting Group. You can find me over on Twitter at iluge876, and I'm also on YouTube where I share different videos on test automation, other testing topics, and a little bit of development using React and Material UI if you're interested in that sort of thing at youtube.com/Julia Pottinger. And I also blog at juliapottinger.com. Now let's get into it. What is a toolkit? So for me, I think of a toolkit as a personal set of resources, skills, or abilities that you use for a particular purpose. So let's say you're on a journey and you get a flat tire. If you take out your toolkit would need to have a spare tire to replace the tire that is flat. It would need to have a jack to jack up the car. You'd need to remove the lug nuts, so you're going to need something to remove that. And you're going to need some other things. Alongside those tools, you're going to need some knowledge. So you're going to need to know how to properly jack up the car. You're going to need the order in which you need to jack up the car before you start removing the lug nuts and the tire. You may need to prop up some of the other wheels, etc. And you need to do all of that safely. In that case, that would be your toolkit, the knowledge and the different tools that you would need to change that tire, put on the spare, and get back safely on the road. In testing with a QA toolkit, it's going to be similar in terms of you're going to need all the skills that you're going to need to address a particular task. So if it is that you're testing an e-commerce website, if you want to know the features of it, you're going to need to know how to do some requirement gathering. You're going to need to know how to create bug reports so that the developers can properly understand it when it is that you do it. If you're doing automation, you're going to need to know some object-oriented programming language. You're going to maybe need to know a specific framework. There are tons of frameworks out there that you can choose from, but you'd need to know how to use one. These are just some things that could possibly be in your QA toolkit if you are going to be testing, for example, an e-commerce site. Now, with that toolkit definition, let's talk about who is an impactful tester or QA. So an impactful QA is someone that uses that toolkit to address specific problems and contribute to the quality of the product. So not just find bugs, but you're going to give direction, you're going to give feedback on what you think is best for usability, functionality, accessibility of a product. And you're going to use all the different tools, techniques, and resources available to you. And by doing that, you're going to become impactful because you're going to add to the quality of the product. And as a QA, you may not be at a stage yet where you can do all of these things, but as you grow in your career, this is something that you use to improve efficiency, overall quality of the product, and you learn on it. So it's like a snowball effect. You start out knowing one thing, and then you continue to build on that. and your quality of work is just going to continue to improve, and you're going to become more impactful. So as a day-to-day tester, there is a lot of things that you have to do, from writing test cases, executing them, doing exploratory testing, doing estimation of stories, backlog grooming, retrospectives. There's so much that you can possibly do as a tester in one day. You have to ensure that you're testing not just a single feature, but you have to test the complete project. So project integrations, APIs, databases, how do all of those things connect? How does it work on the UI? Are you doing visual regression? There's so much that you would have to do on a day-to-day. And an impactful tester would know how to do these things, know how to get them done, communicate well with the team, from creating those new features, doing integration testing, doing regression, ensuring that the product is of a certain quality. These are just some day-to-day tasks. And these are a lot of things, and I'm sure there's a long list that you could also add on to say, I also do these additional things. What I'm saying is not exhaustive by any means, because I know that as QA, we play a very integral role in the quality of the product. So what skills do you need to have in order to carry out these day-to-day things? And I've broken them down into some different sections. Now, firstly, I think you need, as an impactful tester, you need the ability to understand Agile and QA processes. A lot of companies are Agile now, so you need to understand how QA fits into that Agile workflow, what your different role is as a QA in that workflow, and how you can contribute to how you can contribute to the project in a good way by asking important questions. So a lot of times you're testing and you may have to think of different users. That's where accessibility and usability comes in, as well as functionality, performance, and it working on different devices and configurations. You have to ask those questions. How is it going to work in this scenario? So you have to think of all different kind of test cases and all different kind of users and stories that you want to consider, and you have to be that voice. You have to ensure that releases are going out on time, but they're also going out at a certain quality. So I know that a lot of times when we're on projects, we are cramped for time, or we're only given a specific time to do testing. We have to be confident in our skills in order to push back sometimes and ask for more time. Say that in order for us to have enough test coverage, we're going to need more time. We're going to need more resources. That is going to be tools. Maybe we need to start doing test automation. Maybe we need another team member. How you go about asking for those things is an important skill. And then moving into doing regression, how you understand which tests you're going to do regression on is very important. So let's say that you have a test suite of 1,000 cases, but only a specific area was mostly touched, then you would probably need to decide that you're going to focus more on that area. And if you have test automation, then you're going to let the automation run on the other areas. Deciding what you put into the sprint and what you're going to have time for is a very important skill. That, along with exploratory testing. If you get a new feature, you need to do exploratory testing if you're going to create test cases, or if you're just checking for bugs. Time boxing yourself for exploratory testing as well is very important, as well as understanding what to automate. So when we talk about understanding what to automate, we can talk about the very important skill of test automation, which is, what are you going to automate? Are you going to do regression tests, performance tests, API, database? Are there heavy data-driven scenarios? And if they're data-driven scenarios, where are you going to store the data? How are you going to generate that data? How are you going to create the test automation framework? Is there a specific language that you're going to use? What test strategy are you going to create for automation? There is a wide variety of things. And as I said, this is not exhaustive. There's so much more skills and so much more that you would need to do as an impactful QA. And there are a variety of other skills. Knowing how to do SQL queries to get back data, doing performance testing, understanding business logic so that you can properly catch bugs that may come out, doing user acceptance testing. These are also other skills. So with all of that said, you may be feeling a bit daunted, like this is really a lot of things that I have to know and I have to do. But I'm going to quickly walk you through how I went about learning all of these things and how you can go about learning it as well. So this is my toolkit. And as an impactful tester, I have over the years built up a toolkit that comprises of a lot of different things. So I can do a bit of CI/CD using Jenkins and GitLab. I can also write test automation in a bit of Ruby and Java, and I mostly use JavaScript with WebDriver IO. I've also used it with Nightwatch. I can create SQL queries. I know how to use tools like Jira. ICQB certified. But these are all different things that have been added onto my toolkit over time, and it didn't just happen at once. So in order to build this toolkit, I had to do 5 things. And these 5 things were very important to me because it helped me get to where I am right now. So when I just started out doing QA, I was in my 3rd year of university and I didn't know much about QA. I just thought of it as something where I would be doing my projects and yes, I would test it, but that's the furthest it went. I wasn't aware that there was an entire career in QA, something that you can do for a life and something that I would have fallen in love doing. I didn't imagine that because at the time it was just development. You're going to write code and you're going to ship code, and the project developers are the most important persons in the software development lifecycle. So I wasn't really aware of QA until I started doing an internship at Quality Works, where I still am now. I started doing that internship and I was exposed to what QA is, and it was mind-blowing. There was so much to learn, and in a way, I felt like, wow, how am I going to learn all of these things? The first thing that I had to do, I had to create a list of objectives. That list of objectives was going to guide me to say, these are all the things that I need to learn, and I need to prioritize them. Which one do I need to learn first? Which one do I need to learn second? And then I also had to set realistic expectations. I was not going to become an impactful tester in a month. I could become a bit more impactful than I was a month before, but I could not have such a big toolkit in a month. I know that I was in this for the long haul. So I had to create a list of resources that I was going to look for and learn. And I also had to set realistic expectation that this wasn't just going to be something that happens overnight. It's going to take me a long while. And another thing that I have to learn is that it's impossible to know everything. You won't ever know everything. That is why you learn the foundations and over time you build on them. And if it is that you forget something, what I do is that I write blogs and I do YouTube videos, and as much as they are for other persons to learn, they also help me, because if I forget something, then I can always go to my blog or where I have written some notes or done a YouTube video and I'm like, okay, this is how I do this again. And it's a really quick refresher. So I'm also encouraging you, if you are interested, if you are shy about showing that to the world, you don't necessarily have to. But writing down your thoughts and your ideas are really important. And after that, I dedicated some time to learn. So I asked for time from my company, and I spent time after work researching and learning. I also use resources and mentors. Stacey Kirk, the CEO of my company, she was a good resource because she has been in the field for a long time, and she bought us books that we can read, like Agile Condensed by Lisa Crispin and Janet. So therefore we started learning about Agile, and I also did ISTQB, and there are a lot of persons on Twitter that you can follow. I see Betty in the chat, she's a really good resource that you can follow. Angie Jones is a good resource that you can follow. Joe from Test Guild is a good resource. Tristan Lombard is also a good resource. Marie Drake. There are so many persons in the testing community, and they're really nice and inviting. Suman is also a good resource, and a lot of persons that are in this Breakpoint conference, they're good resources that you can use to learn. And over time as well, doing multiple projects, I also started to learn more. So on my journey, I learned how to do manual testing, but then I was thrown into the world of test automation. And yes, I had written code before, but test automation is a bit different because you have to know how to do assertions properly. You now have page objects, a certain level of abstraction, and you also have to know how to do locator strategies. So I started doing that in Java because I was a Java girl in university. I always know how to do Java, but I had to learn how to do JavaScript for a project. And from then on till now, which was like 5 years ago, I've always been doing JavaScript. So I was very much out of my depth learning JavaScript, and this right here is the first JavaScript code that I wrote. This was in 2015, and it was very horrible. It was, so in this slide right here, I was doing a search feature. I was clicking on something, waiting for the element to be visible, and here I was using Nightwatch.js. So I would set some value, then I would pause and I would loop through all the things, and that would take forever. And it was really flaky. Every time they did a new release, or let's say they added a new div, because of my locators, it would just fail because that div would just make the locator that I had obsolete. But this is one of my first automated tests that I wrote about 6 years ago. And as I said, I had no page objects. My locators were very horrible. They would break on every release. And I really didn't know JavaScript because, yes, I knew how to code and I was writing code in Java, but JavaScript was a bit different. And at the time, ES6 had just came out, and I was on a project with someone that really knew ES6, and they were using the newest conditional loops, and they were using callbacks and promises, and I was just lost. I didn't know what they were doing in the project, and we were working together, and I just took forever to complete a ticket. So I was like, this isn't good. So I set out and I learned to JavaScript. So at the time, I was learning JavaScript using Code School, and I was learning Node.js. And they had this song that I still remember even now. When they started the tutorial, the song would come in and I would be dancing and I would get hyped. So I'm going to play the song. Let me know what you think about it. It's a Node.js song. And I really took that time and I learned JavaScript. And then I moved from Nightwatch to now WebDriver.io, which is my all-time favorite test automation tool. I highly recommend it. There are other tools that you can use as well, but I really love WebDriver.io. So let's go ahead and listen to the song and let me know what you think in the chat. It's not playing. All right. Yeah, so that was the song, and I liked it because when I started writing JavaScript, I was like, okay, this is cool. I was really daunted, but the song was really catchy and I liked it. And each course that we were starting, they would have that song, and they probably had other songs, but this was the one that I really remembered. So I saw somebody in the chat saying that they have never gotten hyped to listen to an educational video, but hopefully that got you hyped, because it did for me. And I found the way that they did the courses really, really great. And that prompted me to learn a lot about ES6 and get more into JavaScript. So this is my roadmap. I started on YouTube, Code School. There were Code School, I think now it's plural site. There were different webinars that we would have. I know BlazeMeter at the time had a lot of webinars. So I would go to all of these webinars. And as I said before, I started using Nightwatch first, and then I switched over to JavaScript, and before all of that I was using Java. So I went on multiple different projects, and all of these different projects taught me different things and enabled me to grow and become better as a QA. Now, with all of that said, how do you go about building your toolkit? And this is applicable for you whether you're creating your own toolkit, whether you're a manager or a mentor and you're helping someone create their toolkits, or whether or not you're just trying to fill gaps in what you know. This is how you can expand your toolkit and the skill set that you already have. So these are the same steps that I did. You need to create a list of objectives. Where are you now? What gaps do you have? What are you trying to learn? Make a list. And as I said before, there are a lot of resources and mentors out there, and I'm going to give you a 12-point list of things that I think you should learn. They're not strict, but it's my way of saying, hey, instead of going out there and researching what you need to become an impactful QA, I'm going to give you a list, a 12-point list of things that you can learn. And then set realistic expectations. We're going to quickly walk through SMART goals. I use SMART goals, and I use goals for my entire life. I budget a lot, and I plan a lot, and I add things into my calendar to manage my time. So realistic expectations along with time management, really important. And dedicating that time to learn. Ask your managers for maybe a Friday each month, some maybe 4 hours every week, because you do need that time to learn. Coming to conferences like these are a good way to learn as well. And there are so many other resources that you can use to learn. So use those resources, use those mentors, all the persons that I mentioned, and I'll also give some links at the end of the slide. And go on multiple projects. In the roadmap, I'll tell you some different projects and things that you can add to your portfolio. But these are definitely the 5 steps that you should take to building your QA toolkit to becoming an impactful tester. So let's get into the 12-step roadmap. The first thing that I want you to do is understand testing concepts, and you can do this through books, courses, and certifications. I took the ISTQB certificate, and if it is that you don't have the money to pay for it, or you think there are other better resources out there, you can use those. I used that because at the time, as I said, I didn't know anything about testing. And for me, I found that it was a good introduction to understanding what the different testing concepts were, what test cases were, what bug reporting was, how to write proper bugs, all of that. There are other materials out there that you can use that will do the same thing, but learn those things. And Agile Condensed by Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin is a really good book. It's a really good introduction to Agile if you're not familiar with it. So learning the basics of manual testing, very important, because I don't want us to go into doing test automation and we don't have a solid foundation on what manual testing is. It's really important. The second thing is to find your community. Find your community to learn and share and grow. Your Agile and your tester mindset will continue to expand. There are things that you're going to need to learn. There are things that you're also going to need to unlearn, bad practices that you may have been doing. And by having that community, you're going to share and grow more. And some of the communities that I suggest for QA is Test Guild. Joe does a really good job of creating materials, podcasts, and I highly recommend it. Ministry of Testing is really great as well. They have test bashes, they're very interactive, and all the persons over there are really great. And then Test Automation University, if you're looking to learn about test automation, it's a one-stop place and it's very free that you can go and look for. Also, Tristan Lombard does some things with testing that you can definitely check out as well. Then the third thing is test cases, plans, and strategies, how you go about executing those. There are different ways that you can write test cases, but what I want you to get from here is how you think about different users, how you break down the different users, how you think about usability, accessibility. Marie Drake is a really good resource for accessibility if you're interested. There's a lot going on in that space, and learning and understanding that is really important, how to execute all those different types of tests. And then root cause analysis, bug verification, and creation and validation. So it's not just about knowing how to manual test. So 1 to 3, you've known how to do manual testing, you have your community, you have the foundation, you have that foundation set. But let's say you find a bug. How do you communicate that bug with your team? How do you advocate for it to be fixed? How do you prioritize that bug? The developer fixes the bug, it comes back to you. How do you verify and validate that the bug was indeed fixed? What other things do you test around it? What if the bug affects other sections of the application? So think about all of those things. So that's really important for you getting started. Now, the fifth thing, you've learned all the testing concepts. You've understood Agile, how testing falls into the software development lifecycle, and you want to focus on doing some test automation. The fifth thing is to learn an object-oriented programming language. By learning a programming language, specifically an object-oriented one, you learn about encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism, all of those concepts that are really important when you're doing page objects in testing, how you separate your test from the functionality and the locators that are going to be in your test automation framework, how you do assertions. Those are going to be applicable when you start doing test automation. And this is a foundation that is really solid for you, so that whether it is you're using a framework that is a low-code framework, that is a click and play back, if it is that there's some trouble in there, you're going to understand the code. Or if you're going to create a framework on your own, you'll still be able to understand the code. And this leads into number 6. So there are different testing frameworks out there. You can do Java with Selenium WebDriver, Python, Ruby. You can use Cypress. There's Robot Framework. There's WebDriver.io. There is Puppeteer, I think, was just being talked about, or Playwright. There are so many different testing frameworks. The way that you choose this is depending on a lot of different factors, and there are different articles out there that you can check about to see what those different factors are. But after you learn a programming language, I've heard that Python is really easy for beginners, so you could probably start with that. I am a JavaScript person, so I'll probably be biased and advise you to start with JavaScript. Other person may advise you to start with Java, but it's all unique to you. So you need to do your research and find out which language and which framework is going to be best for you and where you are at. It could be specific to your company that you're working for, or specific to a job that you want to get, or somewhere that you want to get to. And then for number 7, very important, after you've learned all of these things, create a portfolio with web and mobile automation. For mobile automation, I use Appium. There are other tools that you can use for mobile automation, but I use Appium because you can use it for Android and Apple. Now, you can do research as well to find out which one is the best one for you and for your scenario. Angie Jones has an article that I'll share the link to later in the chat, called 10 Portfolio Projects for Aspiring Automation Engineers. You can take a look at that and see how you can put together your portfolio. This portfolio is going to help you sell yourself for whatever it is that you want to move forward in. And then after you do that, the 8th one is that you need to understand API testing. So before, we were probably talking about UI functional automation. API testing is on the service layer in the test automation pyramid, and you need to be able to understand API testing. If it's even manually, it's very important for you to check APIs. And then you can also add API automation as well if you decide to move into that depth. The last 4 has to do with understanding SQL and databases. So databases are also on the service layer along with API. Understanding databases. A lot of times I have had to create queries, even if I'm doing manual testing, just to get back data to verify where certain bugs are, or the data that on the QA environment, why is it not the way that I want it to be? So having that skill is very important. And then understanding performance testing. Performance testing is really important for big sites, for example, like Netflix or Twitter, where a lot of users are going on it. You don't want it to be overloaded. So understanding performance testing, really key as well. And then understand your role of quality in the product. Find out where you fit. And this can change from team to team, but once you have 1 to 10, which are really great foundation and solid skills in your toolkit, then understanding and advocating as a quality engineer won't be as hard. And then lastly, be innovative. You are going to have so many things. You're going to be more confident. So you have to be innovative, champion quality, and bring ideas to life. There are different ways that you can do things, or different ways that you can do testing as well. Now, that is a lot to do. That is a lot to accomplish. You may be wondering how you can do all of that. What I would suggest is creating SMART goals. SMART goals are specific. You want to achieve a specific thing. As you look on the goal, you're able to identify what that specific thing is because it's measurable. And what evidence do you have that is going to prove that you've completed this goal, so that you can reevaluate if you need more time or if you need to adjust the goal. And the goal should be attainable, realistic. How are you going to achieve the goal within a specific time? And it should be relevant in that it matches your core values that you want to achieve in the long term. So if you want to expand your toolkit, then the goal should be to add a new skill or technique to that toolkit. And finally, it should be time bound. There should be some time that you have set to achieve this. Now, here's a quick example. So I want to complete the test automation web UI JavaScript learning path on Test Automation University. It's measurable because I'm going to get a certificate of course completion for each course that I do. It's achievable because the WebDriver IO course by Julia, I was able to do that in 2 days. So I am going to learn JavaScript so that I can create automated tests in different frameworks, which is WebDriver IO, Cypress, and Nightwatch. And I'll also be able to do visual regression and performance testing. That is going to meet my long-term goal of increasing my toolkit. And I'm giving myself 2 months. Now, this time may be a bit short or too long for you, but you can adjust accordingly. You can cut it down to learn only one course, or you can cut it down to learn one specific concept. Now, with all of that, you may still be daunted, but remember that you can't know everything, and it's going to take time to learn. So I want to tell you this proverb. It's a Jamaican proverb, and it says, 1 cocoa, full basket. So 1 cocoa, full basket. That means do not expect success overnight. Do not expect to complete everything at once. Success and achieving things takes time. And the next one, which is a favorite of mine, is every mickle make a muckle. Every mickle make a muckle. That is small things when combined one by one can have a very big effect. So you're combining learning testing concepts. You're combining learning how to create test cases. You're combining learning JavaScript or Java or Python. You're combining learning how to do performance testing. Those are your small mickles. And putting them together, you're going to create your muckle, which is going to be your QA toolkit as an impactful tester. And you can think of every mickle make a muckle as similar to the proverb of the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You just have to start. And most importantly, you have to celebrate your wins. All of this can be very demotivating, can be very daunting when you have a long list of things that you want to achieve and it's going to take so much time. But every small thing that you accomplish, celebrate your win. You have put in the time, you have put in the effort, and you deserve to celebrate. You can celebrate in any way that you want, but celebrate your wins. And very quickly, how does improving your toolkit help you? So you've done all this work, what do you get from it? And the first thing is that it positions you for a promotion or a job if it is that you wanted to be qualified for a certain job. This along with this advice. So when I started, I like to do plans. So I created a career plan along with my manager on the things that I wanted to learn in my journey. So I wanted to get promotion. I also wanted a pay increase because money is very important. It's how the world goes round, and it's how we pay for rent and food and taking care of our families. So that's really important. Once it is you start to increase your toolkit, it's going to position you for these things. So set your goal, ensure that your manager is aware of your goals, aware of your accomplishments. Talk about it in your one-on-ones. How are you going to put deliverables that you need to meet around the different things that you're adding into your toolkit? How can you move from the beginning of a QA to a senior QA or even a manager? And once you move up and you've gained that experience and that complete toolkit, you're rewarded with that promotion. And I mentioned one-on-ones before. This is a great thing that Julia Evans created. It talks about things that you talk about with your manager. So how you can see what your toolkit is fitting in with the company goals, how you can ask for opportunities, how you can be impactful, and how you can prioritize things for the team, and feedback that needs to be specific and measurable, how you can give feedback on your growth as well. How can the company improve? How can the team improve, etc. So this is something that I personally use with the people that I manage, and I found it to be very effective. You can use it to talk about one-on-ones with your manager. And lastly, advocate for yourself. A lot of times persons may have your interests at heart. So I created my plan with my manager, but I had to do some work to advocate for myself and follow up, because people can become busy with other things, and sometimes they may not have your best interest at heart, but you should always have your best interest at heart and advocate for yourself. And then when it is that you have your toolkit, you're going to be very confident in yourself, and you're going to be more knowledgeable. So you're going to be able to give talks, because I didn't start here where I could come on a stage and give a talk for 30 minutes on a QA toolkit and showcase my knowledge on YouTube, all of that. But over time, I became more confident in my skills and my knowledge because I built up my toolkit, and I'm comfortable going on new projects. At one point, I didn't know anything about API testing, and I went on a project for the first time, and I had to test APIs, and it was very scary because I was like, what are APIs? But I did research, and I know if I am to go on a project to test APIs, I'm going to be very confident. So that's what your toolkit is going to give you. And it's going to give you a portfolio to impress. So you're going to have API testing, manual testing, test automation, web and mobile automation, performance testing, so many things. And it's going to be awesome. And then finally, the last two, very important, you're going to become a champion of quality. You're going to test for usability, accessibility, and you're going to be that champion for different persons, different users that will be using the application. And you're going to ensure that the product is of a great quality. It's secure, it's friendly, it's verified and validated. And you are going to make an impact. With all of these together, you're going to be awesome. And I believe in you. You got this. Go forth and make an impact. Now, these are the links that I promised. I will copy them and put them in the in the Hopping chat. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have been inspired and motivated, and you have all the things that you need to create your roadmap. I am available on Twitter or LinkedIn if you want to send me a message. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I talk about more things like these. And it was really great talking with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. I loved that talk. I loved how you sort of laid out almost a roadmap of getting into QA, and whether you're already in QA or looking to get into QA. I think your presentation was really helpful. I think definitely I'll be asking you for all the links, and I think definitely looking at watching some of your talks on YouTube and some of the resources you've shared. But thank you for that. That was very, very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. So we've got a few minutes left for questions. So I'm just going to try and pick a few, and let's see how many we can go over. So, okay. First question is, I think around teams which only have developers doing testing, and when you introduce a new role, which is, let's say, QA to the project, like what are some of the challenges? How do you facilitate the handoff between QA and dev, and typically what have you found to be the main touch points?
The main touch point I found is to be communication and having a strategy around that. So whether it is that you need to do a knowledge handoff, or it is that you need to understand the new role. So the developer understands that they'll no longer be doing the testing, but the tester is going to come in. Understanding that role and that handoff are found to be tricky. A lot of time handoffs aren't done properly. So therefore that leads a lot of questions where the tester, after they come in, they have to go back and forth with the developer. So if you ensure that there's a proper transition period, as well as there are proper transition goals. I found that to be really important, and ensure that the knowledge and skills. So if it is that the developer was using JavaScript, for example, the person that is going to replace that should also know JavaScript so that there can be a smoother transition. If you're going to take someone that has no object-oriented programming language, then you're going to need to give them time to train and become ramped up. So overall, I found that having a transition period helps to smooth that out.
Got it. All right. Follow-up question, or not a follow-up, but another question around QA is how do we ensure that QA does not end up sort of getting rushed towards the end of a sprint, right? And let's say slowing down the sprint, or like having to work really fast to finish the testing before you're ready to ship that release.
Yeah. I mentioned that in the talk that you have to be a champion for quality, and being a champion for quality means that you are going to advocate for time. So normally you have sprint planning. That is your place to say we can only take 5 tickets because last week we took 10 and I did not have the time to finish all 5. So realistically, for this 2-week sprint, I can only take 5. And you need to start becoming that champion. So I know there's going to be a lot of time crunches. If it is that they insist that you need to take 10, then you need to start asking for more resources. Are the developers going to help me test? Is the product manager going to help me test? How long is that going to take? Can I ask for more an ex-team member? So advocating for yourself in not just getting promotions, but also in the work that you do is really important, because if you don't speak up, then it's just going to continue and continue, and you're going to be asked to do overtime. You won't have a good work-life balance. You need to have a good work-life balance. You need to advocate for all of those things. So more time, more resources, less tasks in the sprint if it is that you don't have all of those resources available to you.
Got it. Got it. I think follow-up question on I think you mentioned, Julia, earlier in your talk about certifications, right, and how that could potentially be helpful. And you sort of went through a couple of certifications yourself. Could you maybe help folks understand, what are some of the things that you learned when you went through, I think it was ITSQB test certification that you went through, right?
Yeah. So when I went through that, I didn't have any knowledge about testing, as I mentioned. So it taught me how what test cases are, what test plans are, what is a test strategy, how to write proper bug reports, what's the things you're to look out for on a project. I also did the Agile one, so I had no idea about Agile. I did that before I read Agile Condensed, which is the book that I recommend. So it taught me what are the different ceremonies, like what is Scrum, what is pointing, what is backlog grooming, how Agile is different from Waterfall, because once I understood that, I knew that I needed to advocate to get things early, to be involved from requirement gathering, because in Waterfall, you know that the QA is at the end of the project, where Agile, you're supposed to be testing even requirements. I didn't know that requirements could be tested. So it opened my mind to understanding that you can also test requirements. User stories as well can be tested. So when it is that we are doing pointing, that's your time to look at the user stories and acceptance criteria. Maybe their acceptance criteria that are missing. I didn't know what definition of done was and how important that was to the project. So that helped me to understand that, along with other resources. But for me, because I didn't really have anything, it gave me a really solid foundation to start.
Got it. Got it. Great. I think there was one more question. I'm sorry. Let me just see if we have maybe one more minute to.
Yeah, I saw a question by Stephanie. So just to clarify that, I meant certain types of testing. I always advocate that, yes, developers should be doing testing. Developers should be writing their unit tests. And there are other types of testing that developers can do. In the scenario that was given, it was that developers were going to hand off to QAs to do testing. So I was assuming that it was specific types of testing that they would hand off to do, and not all testing, because developers should test as well.
Got it. Fair enough. Okay, I think that's actually all we have time for, Julia. I think we're gonna get started before the next talk. So thanks again for your time. I think definitely I've seen so much engagement on the chat. People are really pumped about your talk, and they loved all the resources that you've shared, and the really nice roadmap that you've shared in terms of building a toolkit and making yourself an amazing QA. So yeah, thanks again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really good time. All right,
Thank
bye,
you,
everyone.
Julia. Bye.